Hey cousins, I'm Shemaya. It's like papaya, except it's not, and this is Plot Twist Please. Let's get into it. Carmen Jones, The Woman, The Legend, a 1954 rendition of Oscar Hammerstein's II's 1943 play. It was significant for a lot of reasons. Notably, it starred the talented and beautiful Dorothy Dandridge and the heartthrob himself, Harry Belafonte. This was the era where if you were on screen, you could also kick your bass and let out a lovely tune. They said, if you want to be a movie star, you gotta be a triple threat. And it wasn't just Gingy Rogers, okay? I'm not playing with y'all. Some context. In American Iconoclast, Carmen Jones and the Revolutionary Divadom of Dorothy Dandridge, it says that the film is a fine line between heroism and cultural betrayal. This is understandable, as it plays on exoticism tropes of Black women, yet is one of the first mainstream films where the main cast is predominantly Black. The character Carmen is a seductress, classy and promiscuous, the kind of woman your traditional grandmother would clutch her pearls at. Not judging her at all, but, I mean, this is beside the point, but she sleeps with a married man. She sleeps with a married man. So I can't co-sign her actions, not all of them. But that aside, she represents a kind of freedom. And I'm not talking about what she does physically. She has a flirtatious aura, a confidence, and relaxed kind of power, a kind of essence that some single Black women have naturally. The thing is, this episode is actually not about Carmen. Gotta keep the people on their toes. Can't get too comfortable. Not in my house. A little bait and switch, yeah. Okay, that was a lot. I don't know what that was. Anyway, as you were. This episode isn't even about Dorothy, a starlet whose tragic life is a cautionary tale. It's actually about a question I've been asking myself in the midst of some of my favorite young Black starlets linking up with men who I'd consider to be SoundCloud rappers with no media training and no intention of protecting their Black woman partner's emotions. No tea, no shade. No tea, no shade. The question, though, is this. Are single Black women who want romantic relationships with men set up to fail? Before I get into that, this is a podcast where I talk about movies and mental health. A sensitive neurodivergent glow-up guide, if you will. It's all coming from a neurodivergent Black woman perspective. So if you like us, if you like my kind, you're in the right place. And if you don't, I'm sorry that you're boring. I'm sorry that you're boring. How embarrassing, and unbecoming of you. Now, I post patron episodes, or, my Patreon on Thursdays, and main channel episodes Fridays and Sundays. So, go ahead and like this video, subscribe to this channel, and let me know in the comments. Have you had water today? If you're listening on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, comment on there. Now, let's get into it. So, today's episode is about the single Black woman whose fear of becoming like a Carmen Jones has caused them to become ill-equipped in the dating market. So, let's talk about this kind of woman, shall we? She's studious. She probably went to an affluent school or has an impressive job. She has traditional values, was told to pay attention to books and not them boys, and probably didn't date until she was out of the house or even until her 30s. If you're this kind of woman, you were always warned against dating because it was dangerous. It would hurt you. But then we grew up, or went to college, and all of our friends were dating. Still, we were told that boys were no good. And so we kept our heads in our books. We watched our friends go from one boyfriend to the next, and though we inherently knew that we were better off, because, who wants the headache of wondering if the guy in fourth period is going to text you back when you have SATs to prepare for, you couldn't help but eventually wonder, why doesn't anyone want to date me? And then, because you're desperate for the only kind of validation that can happen after a guy says, I like you, you jump at the first opportunity to hear those coveted words. And then, because we're impressionable, we get tricked by the first boy. I do in fact remember the first time a man tricked me. Yes, tricked me. Just in case we are unclear, you and I, on what it means to trick someone, I believe that when you lead someone to believe something that is not true, it is at best a careless act, and at worst, a gross manipulation from start to finish. I want to be very clear on this day. this wasn't the first time a man showed disinterest in me romantically. I mean, I'm a Black woman who grew up in the suburbs in the Midwest, so I'm used to it. If you know, you know. If you know, you know, because those boys were not ready for all of this. But that being said, this happened to me once, and it took once for me to decide that I never wanted to feel that powerless again. And then came the second time, and I failed myself. I went back on my vow. I was hungry, and the mud pie was the only food in 1,000 miles, so I ate it. Every last drop. And I licked the bowl. I licked the bowl! A moment of silence for my dignity. But then I got mad, because not only are Black women in a drought, yes, statistically, if you weren't aware, we are outperforming men professionally, but we have the highest rate of singleness among women of any other race. Not only are the odds just not in our favor, but we are punished for being thirsty. We are punished for wanting romantic connection and fooled into believing that if we had a tiny part in our harm, then we must have brought the whole thing upon ourselves, or, maybe we even deserved it. And I do want to put the link with the statistics out there. I want you to be aware, though, that it is still up for debate how these statistics were gathered and whether or not they are useful today. But that's my frame of reference. In case you're, a studious specimen like myself. You could tell I'm studious because I'm wearing this blazer. If I wasn't studious, I wouldn't be wearing a blazer. But the thing I never really understood about this phenomenon among women is whenever a man hurts a woman, like in its younger stages of life, there's this kind of understanding, like across the board. We're kind of just like, well, he was young, so we didn't know. But whenever a woman is hurt by a man while she's younger, while they're both, learning and growing, she's stupid. She should have known better. She's the one who failed. If you get hurt by a man, you have failed. But if you are a man who hurts a woman, you're just being a kid. Like, what? It's the incongruence for me. It's the mismatch for me. I like my socks to match. Sue me. I like my socks to match, and these just don't. Now, if you've gotten this far in the episode, this is the part where I may or may not decide to cut out the next portion. I do enjoy having an intimate relationship with my listeners and viewers, but this is a story that, though it doesn't affect me emotionally and is simply logical events from one thing to the next and a bunch of facts about something that has transpired in my life, it can very well change the way that you all interact with my content. And I do know there's gravity behind revealing something personal. I do know that, which is why I want to handle this story with care. So if I've left it in, it's because I think that my embarrassment can help be a lesson for someone else. If I've taken it out, I probably didn't think it was necessary. So let's dive in, shall we? The fact of the matter is that first time I got tricked, I fought hard. But this person kept showing up, kept finding ways to be wherever I was. And I can, without question, say that there were more than a couple of times that this person forced themselves into my orbit when they didn't need to be. Just had no business being there and just showed up there. When they weren't supposed to be, but due to their own deliberate planning, they were there. Frankly, I do think it was, in hindsight, somewhat of a control tactic, somewhat, you've heard it before, wanting someone's attention, but not wanting to commit to what that attention would lead to, Although this person had a girlfriend, so it was even more janky of a move, but I digress. At the time, I just found it frustrating. And I immediately thought that I'd done something to bring up this behavior. Maybe they were trying to manipulate me, and maybe it's because I'd shown myself to be manipulatable. Maybe I'd been too emotional, too kind, too feminine, too sweet, and had unintentionally communicated to this person, hey, I'll fold like silly putty at your bids for attention. Maybe I wore too many pastels. hey, you can see I have a lot of pastels in this closet. I think it would do the trick. Maybe I should have worn fishnet stockings and bright red lipstick to let him know that I wasn't born yesterday. Maybe none of these tactics would have worked. And I'm proud to say that I did not fold for a long time. I dated, I filmed a TV show, I performed in some of the most coveted theaters in Chicago. I sang at open mics, I started a business. But then I had a moment of weakness. And then after my moment of weakness biting me in the butt, it all started to click. Every sly smile, every comment perfectly crafted to seem like he saw me as an individual rather than an ego boost. Because let's be clear, that's what I was. I know that now. All of those moments curated by this person were manipulative. I have no fear in saying that openly, and there's no doubt in my mind that it was manipulation. And if you're like me, a late bloomer, autistic Black woman who had never dated anyone, this realization would have made you furious. But to my surprise, most responses to situations like this, when you tell other women, result in a resounding, been there, almost as if to say that this, being manipulated, a tactic used by abusers, is not only rampant within the dating market, it is common. Welcome to womanhood. The notion was this: if you haven't questioned your sanity because of a man's inconsistency, then you haven't dated men. And it's unfortunate. However, I'm not saying that women are free from the tomfoolery. I'm not saying that we're not guilty of it as well, but there is a direct power imbalance here. And I think most men are aware of that imbalance before, during, and after they hurt women. I've come to the realization, even while writing this draft, that you can be attracted to someone while also wanting to exert power over them. But that doesn't mean you care about them. Sometimes it means exactly the opposite. And sometimes we think we care about someone when what we actually care about is being their hero. Not even their hero, but being a hero in their eyes, being something to be desired, to be wanted. And when we can no longer be that, when we can no longer be perfect to them, we shamelessly discard them. The second thing I learned through this debacle and the many debacles, the romantic debacles of my life, was that an imbalance of power inherently exists when one person in a romantic dynamic has more relationship experience than the other. If you know nothing about the ways that someone can manipulate somebody else, can gaslight them, or lie, but the other person is well aware of these tactics, whether they planned on implementing them prior or not, they have the advantage. How could they not? If they know all the tricks in the book and you haven't even read the cover, how can you win? How can you be safe? They've been here before. You haven't. And as a sensitive Goyo, that means someone like me has to be extremely careful with who I invest in romantically. Autistic people have to be so careful. The person you're with has to be kind. They can't be selfish. They can't. I also realized that people get into relationships for different reasons. My reason happens to be mutual care, respect, and honesty. And I would be naive to think that that's the norm. A lot of people are in relationships because they're scared to be alone or because they want to have a good time with someone forever. And thankfully, I know I'm a good time, and I never have to fear being alone, ever. It's like a superpower. As a Black woman who aced the grades but struggled with romantic connection, I've had to figure it out after my peers did. I learned the lessons after my friends did, but I will say I don't think that's entirely a bad thing. My friends can now help me. They've seen the pitfalls. They've been in them. They've experienced them. They can vet guys for me. I can be in safer situations because I know myself better now than I ever have. And I'm proud of myself because now I have an exit strategy. I didn't have that before. And maybe that was one of the many problems, is I didn't know how to say, I want no part in your ego trip, sir, or I'm not interested in speaking to you, or stop, or wait. I couldn't resist. I'm sorry. I couldn't resist. Anyway, back to scheduled programming. But now I have tools. And more importantly, I know how to leave a situation where it's clear I'm not valued. Last night, or it would be last night whilst I'm recording this, I took myself out to dinner, which is something I do once a quarter, just as a little treat to myself. I had been waiting for this night for months. I was going to get my regular order, pad thai and dumplings. Juicy, juicy dumplings. It was a tame evening north of 60 degrees, and I was going to have a lovely time. But then the evening turned. There were a few instances that made me feel, well, unwelcome, and they happened within the first 5 minutes of my dining experience. So, at a certain point, I had a choice. I could either wait and see if my treatment improved, or I could leave. I know exactly what I would have done 10 years ago. And what I would have done is I would have sat there and waited for them to decide that it was time to treat me better. I had done it before. But for whatever reason, it took me less than 5 minutes to make that decision. I left. And it felt good to leave. It felt good to tell myself that I deserved better. And honestly, I'm going to backtrack because I know exactly why I did that. I know I did it. I know why. Oops. Oh, God. It's because when someone shows you how much they value you, you have an obligation to yourself to remove yourself. It's in the contract. You are the love of your life. And if you have a vow to yourself to honor yourself in sickness and in health, you need to move accordingly. On your good days and on your bad days. When you're thirsty and when you're quenched. No exceptions. As a person of faith, it has always been extremely difficult for me to find the balance between caring about others and protecting myself from those who would have no problem with emotionally bankrupting me. But I think I found the line. And I think, in fact, I found it a long time ago. So, if you're a late bloomer, a former sheltered Black girl, or a neurodivergent nerd who never quite figured out how to be in a relationship, you're not alone. And actually, I'm proud of you. I am. Anyway, that's all I have for you today. If you enjoyed this or gained something from it, please subscribe. I hate saying that, but subscribe. It's great for the algorithm. Like the video, comment on the podcast. Be blessed and stay